Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy podcast. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a newer, stronger foundation essential in creating your meaningful legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. As much as you like this podcast, I'm certain that you're going to love the book that I just released on Amazon, Fuel Your Legacy, The 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy. I wrote this to share with you the experiences that I had while I was identifying my identity, how I began to create my meaningful legacy, and how you can create yours. You're going to find this book on Kindle, Amazon, and as always on my website, samknickerbocker.com. Welcome back to Fuel Your Legacy and another incredible guest from the UK. We're going to give a shout out to Nick Theil. The cool thing about meeting with people from all over the world is you get to hear different opinions, different mindsets, and because of different economic situations, there's a lot of things that maybe we haven't thought about because we live in our specific country, that when we start thinking about how is this working in other countries, it gives us ideas of how we can maybe implement some of their strategies that they're using in our country or in our culture. So stay tuned for that. We're going to maybe think about what is unique to there, or what is he doing on a daily basis that I could be doing on my end of the world as well. So Nick, he's spent about 20 years in IT, had a full career there, but just has a passion for coaching and helping other people, and specifically dads. So he considers himself a coach to dads, helping ordinary men become extraordinary dads. And he's on a mission to create a new generation of dads, which I love that. I coach with a coach. His whole thing is called next generation, next gen coaching. Like, he focuses on how do you become the next level of a coach? There's a lot of life coaches out there. How do you become the next level? So I love this when you said helping become the next generation of dads, helping them be a new version, a new, better version of dads. So with that being said, Nick, go ahead and introduce your past, how you have come to where you're at, why you left corporate America, the whole spiel. I'd love to hear all about it.
Sure, great stuff. Thank you very much, Samuel. Good to be on the show with you. So let's go back in time. So I ended up working in IT, and to be honest, that was an accident. So I went through a typical childhood, went to a good school, went to university, got a degree in business studies. And even back then, I think I had a sort of entrepreneurial passion inside of me that I didn't want to follow the normal corporate world. I always felt that there was probably more out there for us than just going through and having what is so often described as a good job. Many times our parents say, get a good education, get a good job, and everything will be fine. I didn't really think that would be the case. But as it was, I remember back then, actually, I wanted to own a gym. That was one of my dreams very early on in my life, own a gym, a health club. I was really into that side of life. Then I ended up getting involved in a company you may or may not have heard of out there in the States, which was Amway, a large multi-level marketing company. And while that didn't really do me any favors in terms of what it gave me financially, what it did do is open me up to the world of self-development, the world of coaching, if you like. And part of the journey of that was that we got a lot of books to read, which are all self-help books, self-improvement books. And it really opened me up to that world out there that said you can become a much better version of yourself. I was a very shy child, lacked a lot of confidence, quite insecure, and didn't have a lot of people skills. So reading these books and being around this environment, around a lot of confident, successful people, started to transform me into someone that developed those traits. And then I thought, wouldn't it be great to teach other people the stuff that I'm learning? But as so often the case, we end up falling into a job after university, and I ended up working in IT. And what so often happens for so many of us is that once we're in a career, it's really hard to get out of a career and change career because we develop responsibilities. And very early on in my working life, I got together with my first wife, and she already had a son who was 7 years old. So I had commitment within a year or two of leaving university. I had these commitments to look after a family. And therefore, I couldn't just turn my back on that and pursue the career I wanted to. So in the back of my mind, I thought, I'd love to be a life coach. But in the front of my mind, I thought I need to keep earning money and provide for my family. And so I ended up spending, as you said, the best part of 20, just over 20 years in IT. And through that time, I moved through a variety of roles, ended up making great money, six-figure income. And before I made all that money, Samuel, I thought, wouldn't it be amazing to make six figures? I bet if you're on six figures, all your problems go away. You're happy as anything. And when I got there, I realized that actually you're no happier than when you were earning half of that. Yes, some of your problems have gone away. Things are a bit easier. But I remember turning up to work every day thinking I am totally unfulfilled. And I didn't really enjoy the work I did. I always knew that that wasn't my passion, wasn't my calling. But I didn't really know how to just turn my back on that kind of income and pursue what I wanted to do. And so I wrestled with that for a number of years, if I'm perfectly honest. And during that time, I had a 5-month career break when I actually got professionally trained as a life coach. But I ended up back in IT because it was the security of what I knew before I had a chance to build my coaching business. And then a couple of years ago, I started thinking I need to do something within the coaching space. I wanted to help men because I was just passionate about wanting to see men be in a position where they could transform their lives. And then I was actually getting coaching myself, and my coach at the time, we looked at where I'd best be able to serve. And we realized that my experience by that point was I was a dad to 3 children by then. So I'd adopted my ex-wife's son when we got married, and then we'd had 2 more children ourselves. Then our marriage had broken down, unfortunately. So as a dad, I'd experienced the whole range of going through adoption, becoming an adopted dad, having my own children, then getting divorced. My children ended up moving 200 miles away. So I went through a whole heartache and a process to understand how to best parent from a distance. And so working with my coach, we realized that the best thing I could do was probably to coach dads and help them go better equip them for the journey that they might go on if it was similar to mine. And it was back then I actually started a page on Facebook for dads. Initially, I thought it would just support single dads. And then I realized all dads go through the same struggles. We all have the same issues in life. So I kind of made it more open to all dads. And I knew what I wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to turn it into a full-time business. But it was hard balancing the demands of my career with what would be needed to turn that into a business. So it kind of sat on the back burner for a while. Just trickling away in the background, and then finally this year, in around May of this year, things were changing at work, and there's a lot of rules in the UK around how I was what's called a contractor, so I wasn't employed permanently by the company, but I contracted out to companies, and all of the tax rules and everything are changing in this country, and so it was obvious that change was coming. There was an uncertainty. And I talked it over with my new wife. We're 2 years married now. And we said, if you're not going to do it now, when are you going to do it? Because she's been encouraging me most of the time we've been married, just to look, stop doing a job you don't enjoy, stop being unfulfilled, and start living out your passion. And I'm very lucky that I've got a wife that supports me so much in that respect, because that's got to be one of the biggest stumbling blocks. And so in May, I made the decision that it was time to walk away from that job and go for it full time, becoming a dad coach, which is what I'm now doing.
That is incredible. I love it. So have you heard or read the book, The Dream Giver by Bruce Wilkinson?
No, I've not heard of that one.
Okay, so I would read that.
Yeah.
And definitely anybody who's listening to this, go ahead and read that. I did a book review on it. I don't know, it's probably been a few months ago, maybe even probably close to a year ago. It's been a long time, but super good book. And I read it regularly. The thing with the book, and why I like this book for this analogy, is because Bruce Wilkinson's able to put into kind of a parable about these dreams. And for Nick, you had your dream, you had your first calling to a dream or to be a coach in college, right? Is that what I'm understanding?
Pretty much. Yeah. All the way back then. Yeah.
And he spent another 20 some odd years not doing his dream, but the dream kept coming up. He's made some small progress towards it. Did you take complete, when you say you took 5 years to go get trained as a life coach, did you take time out of like quit your IT job while
No,
you,
5 months.
oh, 5 months. Okay.
5 months, yeah. So I had a contract that ended, and I decided, right, I won't pursue a job. I will pursue what I believe I'm being called to do. And so I kind of reignited during the first couple of weeks of doing that. The whole concept of wanting to become a life coach kind of like came back into my conscious, because I'd put it to one side so much that I'd actually forgotten about it.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly it all came back, and I thought, yeah, that's what I always wanted to do back then. That's what I should do now. And then that's when I sought out the correct training, etc., and got qualified.
Yeah, I love that. So the point is, your dreams, even though you maybe have said no to your dreams before or in the past, they'll keep coming back up, especially if it's your purpose, if it's what you're meant to do. Those things are going to keep creeping back up into your life. And at some point, we've got to take a second, pause, look over and say, okay, what is it about that that's so important? I think that a lot of people have gotten into some type of multi-level marketing. Amway is, my family was part of it when I was younger. But I think it is, these multi-level marketing, people often will give them a bad name, but the reality is they're one of the big, like if we were talking about gateway drugs, right? They're one of the biggest gateway drugs to personal development, which is awesome.
Absolutely.
If that's all they serve as a purpose, is to help people in mass numbers get focused on personally developing themselves and focused on what value are they adding to society. If that's all that they did and all they accomplished, that's a win. And so many people will sit there and talk about it like it's a negative thing. That's a win. If that's all that they accomplish, that's huge to at least accomplish that. So I love that idea. And especially since he was a shy and almost introverted person at the beginning, some of the best coaches that I know are all naturally shy and introverted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's just how it is.
It's weird, isn't it? And I was the guy that if I saw you coming down the road and I knew you, I crossed over to avoid having to say hello to you. I was that kind of shy guy.
I've not been that type of shy, but
it's a crazy kind of shy.
Yeah, the point is though, there's a lot of people who are probably feeling that same way when they go to work. They're avoiding people. They're avoiding eye contact. When they're driving, they're avoiding connection with other drivers. They're so stuck in their own little world. And it's not bad necessarily to be stuck in your own little world. But there is a lot of people out there that when you're willing to no longer be selfish, right, and choose to be selfless, then you actually are ending up gaining connection with other people. And it doesn't mean that you have to overwhelm yourself. I'm naturally an introvert as well. And if there's too many people around, too much going on, I'm like going to go shut myself in a bedroom, because it's overstimulant. But it's important to understand that that's a natural thing. So if you're going through that, or somebody you know is going through that, just be with them, understand that that's where they're at. But that's incredible. What do you feel like made the biggest shift for you to go from that shy introverted person identity to willing to step out? I'm not saying that you at your core have changed your desire, but what made you willing to step out of that box and explore new things?
I mean, it's a great question, Samuel, but I think probably the biggest thing was that I got comfortable with who I was. I got happy with who I was. And that was the biggest breakthrough. So not only was I this shy, insecure guy, but back then I was a really skinny kid growing up. And then I got into weight training and bodybuilding, and that was a bit of an obsession, hence wanting to open a gym when I was really young.
Right.
And that was me probably putting an outer shell on this shy guy interior. And then as a result of reading all of these books, getting around successful people, being built up by people that knew how to build you up as a person and not just people knocking you down all the time, I actually started to like who I was. I got comfortable with who I was. And I thought, this is me. And you'll either like me or you won't like me, but this is me. And I don't need to try and be anyone other than myself. Funnily enough, when that happened, I started not only coming out of my shell and being more willing to talk to people, but I wasn't so obsessed with my bodybuilding either, because I no longer had to wear an outer shell to protect me. I was just who I was.
So what do you think it is that holds people back from liking themselves to accomplish that?
That's a great question. And my wife has just released a course for people on how to like themselves. So you'd think I'd know all the answers to this, wouldn't you? But I think a lot of it is just that the programming we get all the way through our childhood. So all the little things that go on as we're growing up are affecting our self-talk and affecting the self-beliefs we have. And we're creating all these limiting beliefs. We're creating these lies that we're telling ourselves constantly about who we are. And in this day and age, it's even harder because you've got social media bombarding you with all these images about how you should be, or the only way to look perfect is this, or if you're not getting 1,000 likes, then obviously no one likes you. So we're living in this space where we are constantly judging ourselves and comparing ourselves with other people. And that makes it really hard to like who we are. And if we can just shift away from that and realize that we're not in a comparison world, and if we could actually see the reality of every person, everyone has their flaws, everyone has their weaknesses, we're all the same. And we've all got the same fears and insecurities. And we should accept that we are how we are. We are created in a certain way, made in a certain way, and we should be happy with what we are and who we are.
Yeah, I agree. What practices or habits or mindsets or whatnot, what would you say could help somebody who's stuck in the not liking themselves stage? What is something they could do to kind of work themselves out into hey, I'm comfortable and I like myself? Like, what is a practice, habit, mindset, or behavior that they could adopt?
Yeah, okay. So I think part of that is literally your self-talk. So whatever you're saying to yourself on a daily basis is what you're going to start believing about yourself. And so the first thing is to start really listening. What am I saying to myself? Am I telling myself negative stories, or am I telling myself positive stories? Am I telling myself beliefs that are pulling me back, or am I telling myself beliefs about myself which are drawing me forward? And even if you start that self-talk and it doesn't convince you at first, it will start to reprogram the mind. It will start to change what we're doing. And then the other big thing for me is just to actually to be around people and to expose yourself in a situation where you start talking to other people and you realize that people do like you, and that helps. Not that we should judge ourselves on what other people think, but also realize that other people's opinion is literally their opinion. And everyone's got an opinion, whether it's a good opinion or bad opinion. But someone's opinion of us doesn't have to become a reality. And I heard that quote years ago, and I thought, what a great quote. Other people's opinion of you doesn't have to become your reality. So it's all about, there's a big exercise I do when I'm coaching dads on knowing their identity. So looking at who actually are you, knowing your values. So what makes you tick, what things are really valuable to you, what things do you do anything to avoid, and then looking at your beliefs and what are the beliefs that you've grown up with that may be holding you back from being the real version of you.
Yeah, I love that. So, and just rewind that for the last 2 or 3 minutes and start putting just one of those things. I don't care what you put into practice, but choose just one thing to put into practice and start viewing yourself better. Even the people who have the best view of themselves, in excuse me, in my experience, can still level up their belief in themselves.
Absolutely.
That's just what I've experienced in the past. So one of these things that I have met with a lot of different coaches, and I don't think it's exclusive to coaches. I think this is a principle of passion that I want to touch on here. You'd mentioned that you were in this career, you had responsibilities. It was hard to leave those responsibilities, and it seemed that there was a binary choice between wanting to life coach, wanting to follow your passion. Okay, we're just going to call it passion, and needing money.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, either in society or just in our own lives, we've come to believe that this is a binary choice, that we can only choose one or the other, and that if we choose to go do our own thing, then we're going to struggle financially. And so now there's this fear around going and doing it ourselves. I'm curious, where do you feel like that belief came from inside of you, that it was either one or the other?
I think it was, well, it's an interesting one, because actually I think in this day and age, I question whether that belief still happens, because I think we're being exposed to a new world and a new set of beliefs that says you can follow your passion and make money. But I think there was a reality check inside of me that said, if I've got this level of responsibility and this amount of money I need every month, how can I suddenly follow my passion and recreate that level of income? Because I didn't feel quite naive enough to think that I could recreate that level of income overnight. contrary to some of the adverts that we get bombarded with out there these days. So maybe it was a reality. Maybe I had my own limiting belief. Maybe, none of us are perfect with, we're talking about all this mindset stuff. But we've still all got additional beliefs that we've got to overcome. And to move into that space where you know that there are people out there doing what you want to do and making the money you need to make. But you sometimes think, well, how do I make the jump from where I am to get to that point as well?
Sure. So I don't know. I don't know what the real answer is. I don't know that there is one answer size fits all, but I think for me, when I'm working with different clients, one thing that I just invite people to think about is perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, when I shifted my perspective in life and this was from what book was it? It's by Brian Tracy. I think it's No Excuses, The Power of Self-Discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Probably one of his best books. I love pretty much all of Brian Tracy's stuff. His style and mine really connect well. I really jive with him a lot. But the question is, or I guess the perspective to have in life in general is, every day in life, if I consider myself a company, every day in life, I am either adding value to my stock or devaluating my stock. And when you start thinking of your life as a stock or as its own company, you're the CEO of your own life and your own company, then it doesn't matter whether you're an entrepreneur or working for somebody else. Okay, I'm putting working for somebody else in quotations, because at that point, when I go into a job interview, I'm no longer waiting for somebody else to assign my value. I'm walking in saying, look, this is the value I'm offering. This is what my stock is worth. Mm-hmm. Now, are you willing to pay me what my stock is worth? Whether that's an employer or as in singular, you're working for a corporation or an individual, or you're working for many individuals. As an entrepreneur, you have lots of different people that you're selling your stock to versus just selling all your stock to one person or one entity. But when you think about it like that, it makes it, at least for me, a lot easier to say, okay, I have value. If I'm making six figures at this company, then I already know that my value is six figures at least, but it's actually more because they wouldn't pay me six figures unless they were making money on me.
Yep, totally agree.
Right.
And so, a great way to look on it.
So then my stock in myself is actually, it's on a discount to this company, whoever I'm working for. What if I was to go get market value for my stock? Mm-hmm. And then I can start looking around, okay, I can make market value for my stock in all these different areas. And then it really is overnight. Like, I know overnight I could be making X amount of dollars because I know the value that I'm bringing. I know the value of my stock and what is being exchanged for the money. And so I was just thinking, maybe if people started thinking about their life from a perspective of, I'm the CEO and every interaction is I'm selling stock in my company. Mm-hmm. And I'm either increasing the value or decreasing the value of that stock every moment of my life, then we're more excited to do personal development and develop ourselves, because now that's direct investment into our personal value of stock. Mm-hmm. And also we're more excited to go share that with other people, because now we're thinking, well, if it's on a discount over here, what's market rate for my services? And then we can go out and find market rate for our services. And what are your thoughts about that?
I think that's great. I mean, I think if I was going to argue with you, sure, so to speak, from the other side, bring it on. Yeah. So I totally agree with what you've just said, with the only thought being that when you're working for someone and your value is, whatever you're being paid, then if you move out of that space to do something for yourself, if you move into a completely different area, that's when it's easy to not appreciate your value as being what it was for that company, because the skill set that you had for that company. So for me, I was working in IT and they were paying me to do a job in IT. They didn't care whether I was a great coach or not. And they didn't care that I was actually making a difference to a lot of people in the company at the time. Then to move into a different space where all my value is in the coaching and the difference I'm making to people's lives, that's when we need a real mindset shift to say, great, I could make great money doing this job, but now I'm going to go and do this job. How transferable is some of the stuff Now, the personal part of me, the mindset, that's fully transferable.
Okay.
And then the IT skills, they're not so transferable.
So I like this back and forth. Okay.
Yeah,
So
it's
I'm
good.
going to argue my argument, I guess you could say, or my position would be that they're not paying you to punch numbers,
Mm-hmm.
right? You might think they are because that's the task you're fulfilling. But if you're an ass, if you're not friendly, nobody likes you, you're a pain to get along with, and you don't function well in their system, it doesn't matter if you're the best person at punching numbers, you're fired because they're paying you for who you are. It's convenient that you fulfill a role for them on the number side. Most companies I've ever worked for or seen people work for, if you don't jive with the company culture, if all you do is a one skill set and that's what they're paying you for, you don't get paid, you get fired.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so the recognition of what value are they really paying me for? Is it because I can punch numbers? That's an added benefit. They're really paying for you for who you are and your morals, your ethics, your integrity, the ability to be on time, the ability to be reliable. All of those things we discount, and we just don't even recognize the value of what those are until you're an employer and you're like, okay, this person can punch numbers really good, but he ain't got anything else going for him. I can't hire that person. And so when you start thinking like an employer, all of those other stuff, that's the bulk of the value. It's not the skill that you could teach a monkey to do. It's everything else.
Yeah.
And that value, I would argue, is 100% transferable into any industry. The skill that you're applying that value to is up to you.
And I'm going to have to agree with you on that one, Samuel.
Good.
It's funny enough because when you started this conversation, the one thing I was going to say was that I actually believe the reason I was able to progress well in the IT industry, even though I didn't enjoy IT and it wasn't my passion, was actually who I was as a person. Absolutely. And the relationships I was able to build within any workplace. And I would often find myself ending up as leading the team. Whichever team I started off in, I ended up leading that team. And it was all about who I was. It couldn't have had anything to do with my actual skills in a job, other than my mindset did say, I will learn this skill, I will learn this job, and I'll be good at it. But fundamentally, who I was, the way I could relate to people, and across a wide range of different jobs, that was what made the difference for me to grow my income really quickly when I was working in IT. So you're spot on with that bit. That is the most transferable thing out there.
I agree. And so the reason I like this little banter between us is because this is where people are missing the mark. They think that they are, like, they identify their identity as being able to complete a skill rather than everything that goes with it. And your identity is not the skill that you complete. Your identity is who you are as a being, as an individual.
Yes, absolutely.
And helping people make that distinction could be the difference between somebody fulfilling their dream or continuing to be unfulfilled.
So true. Yeah. I coach guys on identity, and what you've just said, absolutely spot on, because so many people wrap their identity up in maybe their exact role at work, or even in them being a husband, or a father, or whatever it is. And the minute that thing changes, so they lose their job or they get a divorce or whatever it is, they've lost their identity because it was wrapped up in that role. But actually, like you say, our identity is who we are. Who is this person? What attributes do we have? When we get clear that that's our identity and these other things are roles, total shift of who we are.
Absolutely. So I think it's perspective. So I love that. And I'm glad that we were able to have that conversation.
Yeah,
so when it comes to specifically coaching dads, helping men become better dads and next generation, what would you say, if you could, and I hope that you can, but describe between where, and we're putting in air quotes here for anybody who's not watching this, but where are current dads, like what's their current mindset and mentality, things like that, and what is the next generation of like the new evolved dad that you're trying to coach people into? What's the difference, and how could we identify either or? And this applies, by the way, this applies to women, this applies to children, it applies to everybody. Just because he chooses to focus on males, these principles, they're human principles, not just
okay.
one gender.
Great question. when I look around, I think a lot of dads are in this space. So I think before we become a dad, we kind of have an idea as to the kind of dad we think we are going to be, or the dad that we want to be. And that may be modeled on the dad that we had, or it may be a complete opposite, because often it's going to be one of the two, or just some ideals in our head. And then we become dad and we realize that it really wasn't as easy as we thought it was going to be. And I think the reason for that is that we haven't actually, when we become a dad, we still haven't really mastered life. And so the bits of life that were bad enough before we became a dad, and when I talk about life, I'm talking about relationships. So, you know, no one taught us how to do marriage. So we get married and we find out, well, living with someone else is actually quite tricky. And we've talked just about identity, and no one really helps us figure out who are we. And we become a dad and we lose our identity even more because, oh, you're so-and-so's dad now and you're so-and-so's husband, and actually I'm still me. What about me? And we lose our sense of purpose because we get into this place like I was, where we're just trying to survive, trying to bring in the money to support the family, and not really figuring out, this is what my dream is, this is what I want to do in my life. We are just existing. And I've been speaking to some dads recently that we're just saying that. I just feel like I'm existing. I'm just making enough money to survive. And again, finance, you know, finance is tough. Kids are expensive. So a lot of dads now are in a place where I think they have lost their identity. They've lost their reason for living. They're struggling in relationships with their wife. And, you know, when you introduce kids into that equation, it's less sleep. It's less time for each other as a couple, and therefore more stress and more struggle. They've lost their identity. They're struggling with their finance. They might have let their health go. And there's all this talk about the dad bod these days. Mm-hmm. And there's the articles say the dad bod is deemed like the sexy way to be now. I'm not sure. I think the evidence is that people still look at a fit physique and say that guy's in good shape and that guy's not in good shape. So all these things we lose, and then there's just the whole, how do I connect with my kids? In this day and age, our kids are hooked to screens, and it's getting worse and worse. And we're trying to find out, how can we stay relevant? How can we be the cool dad that our kids still want to hang out with, that they want to talk to? And again, no one taught us any of this. So we arrive at a place where we're trying to master these 6 different things. No one's taught us how to do any of it. And we just start feeling overwhelmed and thinking, I'm probably not the dad that I wanted to be. And you start feeling like a bit of a failure. But we have no idea what to do about it. And I think men are probably worse than women in that respect, because we're not naturally good at asking for help. We don't like to admit that we're struggling. I often joke that if a man is lost, he won't stop and ask for directions. He'll keep driving until he finds his way. And it's kind of the same with when you're struggling with being a dad. You don't really want to turn around to your mate or your partner or your in-laws and say, I'm struggling, I need help. So we just kind of keep quiet, we suffer a little bit, and we struggle a lot. And that's where I think a lot of dads are. And certainly the more I'm in a lot of groups on Facebook, etc., and I'm interacting with a lot of dads, and they're all suffering from one of those things.
That's cool. And so what's your ideal vision for them as far as where you're going to coach them into?
Yeah. So kind of like turning all of that on its head. So if we looked at it, it's a dad that knows who he is clear with his identity, is happy with who he is, and doesn't feel the pressure to conform and be someone he's not. Someone who knows where he's going in life, someone who's got a purpose. And it's not just his purpose isn't just to survive, it's to pursue his dream and to set that example to the family of, this is what it looks like to be living a life of passion, a life of purpose. Someone that can model good relationships with their partner, with their children, with their colleagues, with their family. So we're not in this toxic situation of everyone falling out with everyone. Someone that knows about health and can raise their children to understand about health, because I think we've got a health epidemic going on now, particularly, I don't know if it's the same out there, but in the UK, we've got some health issues that are just getting worse and worse, such as diabetes. It's crippling the system, and it's causing more and more children to suffer. Money, again, big problem. And we're in a world where money is so available. You can go on gambling sites, you've got lottery sites, you've got credit cards offering you as much money as you want. And no one's really understanding what the impact or implication of borrowing all that money is. So again, we're The dads of today are possibly getting themselves into situations, and the new generation of dad says, I'm financially responsible, I know how to handle money, and I'm going to teach my children how to handle money, how to be good stewards of money. And then in terms of the parenting, it's the dad that I want to get to, the new generation of dads. They understand how to show up, how to be present with their children, because it's no good just being there. It's about being present and about really connecting with our children. And that varies, obviously, from when they're a toddler through to when they're a teenager. The whole how being present looks and feels will totally vary. But it's understanding how you've got to be, how you've got to show up, and putting the child as a priority in your life, along with your partner, to make sure that they are growing up with an active, participating, present dad in their world.
Yeah, I love that. And that, again, that goes to anybody. It's husband, father, son,
Absolutely,
wife, mother, grandmother, daughter. I mean, everybody needs to work on those skills. In my opinion, they're in general, everybody needs to work on. We all are going to find our little niche, the person that we connect to the best, right? But if you feel like that you could benefit from that type of coaching, reach out to Nick. I mean, I'm sure he's willing to have a conversation at the very least.
absolutely.
And if he's not the right fit for you, he'll let you know, and he can direct you to somebody who might be better fit. I'm curious, just because I've talked about this or struggled with this. When it comes to identity, I really want to help people identify their identity as well. Mm-hmm. But I want to hear your take on this. I have seen this happen where, because two people didn't know who they were when they got married, then they had kids, but the whole time they were fulfilling somebody else's identity of them. And then you help them dig down and find out who they are at their core. And when both people find out who they are at their core, they really find out that they don't really connect. They're not a good couple. It's, for lack of a better word, it's better that they get divorced and go fulfill their passions, because they're so far on different pages when they get down to their core. How do you handle that from a coaching perspective? Because again, you don't want to be breaking up families. Nope. And on the other hand, you want people to fully live and be and fulfill their identity and who they are meant to be. So how do you balance that? If somebody gets into a bad relationship they didn't know was bad, or they didn't know was contrary to who they are, and then they find that out, how do you go about handling that situation?
Well, that is a massive question, isn't it? And you've just landed that one on me, Samuel. Thank you. So I mean, that's a really interesting one, because I think if you get to a point where you have successfully got them both to unveil their true identities, to me, that's a massive success, because they can now be free to be who they are. But I think, as you said, that there may be an unfortunate situation where actually, when they're living true to themselves, there actually is no connection between them. And I think you've got to look at it within marriage. Too often people say, oh, I've fallen out of love. Well, that's great. You can fall in, you can fall out of love very easily. Love to me is a verb, it's a do, it's an action, it's not a feeling. The feeling of falling in love is great. It happens early days, it's exciting. But there'll be times when that feeling can go away, but we decide to love on a daily basis. I think, referring to the situation you were just talking to, I think it comes down to what their nature is. And are their natures aligned still in any way that could hold them together, where they could appreciate that their identity, their values maybe are a bit different, or in revealing their true identity, are their values so misaligned that actually it's not healthy for them to stay in a relationship? And while I would hate to advocate a couple breaking up when they've got children, even when they haven't got children, because I've been there, I've seen what the effect it's had on my children. I'm also not an advocate of couples staying together if there's absolutely no relationship between them, because I think you're modeling an unhealthy relationship to the children as well. So we've got to be really honest with ourselves, because too many people use that as an excuse to walk away.
Sure.
But I think, in the very least, if you've coached them through that process, and there's just such a divide between the two of them, then maybe the best thing you can do is coach them into a healthy situation where they can move apart, but in a way that doesn't mean there's any animosity between them.
Sure.
Because I think what causes a problem in marriage breakdown is the animosity and the use of the children in the middle of an argument.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't think we can fix every marriage going. And if we can't fix it, then I'd say divorce well.
Mm-hmm.
And that sometimes, while it's unfortunate, it may prove to be the better solution.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I've talked to quite a few marriage therapists, divorce attorney. I've talked to a lot of people about that, and I don't have the right answer.
Yeah.
I'm fully committed to helping people identify who they are at their core. I believe, as you've stated, that you can choose to love anybody, regardless of how compatible you are. But I do think that compatibility is also a big it's got to be part of the equation. You got to be, you can't, I don't know. It's hard for me. I don't know.
It's such a hard one, isn't it? Because
I don't know if duty of
what
marriage outweighs the fulfilling the purpose of happiness on this planet.
Yeah.
It's
and like I say, I think you've got to look at what you're modeling to your children.
Mm-hmm.
Because what you want for your children is to understand how to select the right partner and make that marriage work.
Right.
And I think if we're not careful, we have children growing up and thinking that marriage is all about mum and dad barely talking to each other or not liking each other, and that's not a particularly great place for our children to grow up either.
Yeah, not at all.
But I really don't want to sit here and I don't want for everyone to think, oh, I'm not getting on great with my partner today, so I better split up so that my children don't see us have an argument. That's not what I'm saying.
No, not at all.
It depends when those true identities come out. It just depends how radically different their values are, and their viewpoints on life. Because there has to be some compatibility for it to be maintainable.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's
a great question. Love it.
It's like the classic ethical dilemma questions where you're just like, I don't know the answer, but I like to think about it because I think it serves me to know, hey, where am I at? What am I willing to sacrifice to share that love and to help and serve and bless others? So I'm curious, how do we support you? How do we get in contact with you? Where's the best place to reach out? Facebook, Instagram, like what's your social media presence? Where's your websites? Like what's the best way to get a hold of you if we wanted coaching or wanted help?
So the best way is probably through Facebook. So I've got a page on Facebook called Dad Up. It's at facebook.com/Dad Up Today. So that's the page, and then I've got a group. If any dads out there are listening and want to be part of our closed group community, it's a free group where I provide a little bit of training, and we're just building a community of dads. And that's at facebook.com/groups/extraordinary dads. I'm just about in the next 2 weeks. I'm launching my online membership program, which will be a very low cost membership program online for dads to get weekly coaching, so training videos on all the topics we've been discussing today, group coaching calls, question and answer session every week, be part of a private community. So if anyone's interested in knowing more about that, they are best off just reaching out to me via Facebook through the means we've just mentioned, and I'll add them onto the mailing list, who are going to get notified in the next couple of weeks when that all comes out. Yeah. And short of that, just finding me personally on Facebook as well. Obviously, I'm on Facebook. I am on Instagram, but I haven't really embraced the Instagram world quite yet. But I know I need to, as my kids keep telling me.
Yeah, it comes and goes for me. Sometimes I'm way active on it. Other times I'm just not active on it. But so this is actually a good time to be releasing this episode because it's going to be right around Valentine's Day. Mm-hmm. So if you just went through Valentine's Day and you're thinking, man, I could do better, then let's
absolutely
let's do some better things.
Yeah, I mean, particularly relationships is one of the biggest things I want to teach dads, and that we've got some brilliant tools that we can give guys that absolutely will transform a relationship for you. And it doesn't matter where your partner is at. We can work just with the guy, and it's going to make a huge difference to what's going on in their home.
Yep. Awesome. I love it. So here's the second to the last section of the whole podcast, which is, again, one of my favorites, but it's called Legacy on Rapid Fire. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions, and I'm looking for 1 word to 1 sentence answers. Depending on how you answer the first question, I may ask you to clarify because I've had some people who they answer the same answer
Okay.
consistently. So I'm like, well, that's good. I'm glad I'm talking to a group of enlightened people, but let's go to the next level and let's go deeper. So you ready?
I'm ready. Fire it over. Come on.
Okay. The first question is, what do you believe is holding you back from reaching the next level of your legacy?
Fear.
Okay. Fear of what?
Fear of failure.
Okay. Awesome. And it's good. It's good that you're aware of that. What do you think the hardest thing you've ever accomplished has been?
Hardest thing. Oh, that's a great question. It is maintaining a relationship with my kids after they moved away and being consistently showing up for them. It may sound stupid to say that's the hardest thing, but in terms of consistently doing it for over 10 years, it's taken a side of me that wasn't in me before.
Yeah, I love that. And what do you think your greatest success at this point in your life has been then?
If I'm allowed to almost repeat the previous answer, the relationship I've got with my children, I think is phenomenal. The fact that they will still travel 4 hours on a Friday and a Sunday every other weekend to come and see me when they're teenagers and have great social lives, that speaks volumes to me that I've done an all right job.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what would you say is one secret habit, mindset, or behavior that you believe contributes most to your success?
I would say my self-talk. So just repeating the positive stuff to myself and not allowing the negative talk to come in.
Awesome. And what are 2 or 3 books that you'd recommend to the Fuel Your Legacy audience?
I love sort of older classic books, but I love The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. One of the books that transformed me way back was How to Win Friends and Influence People.
It's a great book.
And Rich Dad, Poor Dad, awesome book.
Mm-hmm.
And anything by Tony Robbins. I'm a massive Tony Robbins fan.
Good.
So anything
That's
by
awesome.
him.
No, awesome. So this is now my favorite question to ask, which is why I say it for last. But I ask all of my clients this. I ask my anybody I'm coaching this, anybody who's joined my business. I am asking all of them this question. Okay, you ready for this question?
I'm ready.
Okay, so we're gonna pretend that you are dead. You've died, and 6 generations from now. So this is your great grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
You get the opportunity to listen into a conversation they're having, sitting around the dinner table, talking about your life, Nick. They're talking about what your legacy is. What do you want them to be saying 6 generations from now about Nick's legacy?
That he made a difference, that he stepped out in faith, with courage, did what he felt he was called to do, and he made a difference that lives on 6 generations later.
That's awesome. I love it. So I've been waiting to say this thing the whole time, but everything that we've talked about today comes down to being in alignment and finding out your identity. And so answering that question, what do you want your legacy to be? If you're listening to this, answer that question for yourself. I ask it on every episode. So it shouldn't be a new question if you've been listening, but I ask this on every episode. You'll see how different people answer it. But answer that for yourself. Really take the time to journal. What do I want that conversation to look like? Second, what are my core values? What are my 3 or 4 core values that for me are absolutely guiding in my life? And if it doesn't, if something that I might be participating in doesn't align with those core values, then I choose not to participate. Third, what fulfills me, right? And as we went through this thing, all of these things Nick has answered. He wants to be remembered as somebody who steps out and is different. His values are family, commitment, serving, keeping people close and connecting with people. And what fulfills him is blessing other people's lives, seeing the light come back into their life, and specifically working with fathers and helping them do what he was able to do. And so, and that wasn't like something that he just came up with. That's there from the beginning of his life, even before he went into college and got out of college. All of these values were there. It just took him a while to align his life in alignment with his legacy, his values, and fulfillment. And then you get to look at how can I bring that to the world and how can I fulfill that and make money doing it. And I'm confident that Nick can help you with all of those things, answer those questions. I also can help you if you're interested in chatting with me. But I just love it. So thank you so much, Nick, for your time. I super appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Late over there.
No problem. It's been fantastic conversation. Really enjoyed it.
Cool. Yeah, well, we will catch you guys next time on Fuel Your Legacy. Thanks for joining us. If what you heard today resonates with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me, and if you do give me a shout out, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Thanks to all of those who've left a review. It helps spread the message of what it takes to build a legacy that lasts. And we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy.